for tuning in once again to our latest video. I want to show you how to make double piping. I think we showed how to apply it, but now I want to show you how to make it. And as you know, these are the dining room chairs, as you know, that we're going to be doing. There's a few choices to trimming out any type of piece of furniture that you might have, and you could do it in double piping, you can do it in GIMP, you can do it in tacks, or you can do it in GIMP and tacks. Today I'm going to show you how to do the double piping, and what we're going to do is we're going to trim out the seat. We're not going to go around the back. We're just going to start it right here and end it on the other side, and then do another piece on the back, and then on the inside back we're going to trim it out. We're going to start right here and trim it out. But that's what we're showing you today, is how to actually measure for the double piping. And you see me cutting it. I'll give you a couple of tips on that, and then we're going to go to the sewing machine. I'll actually show you really good tips on how to make double piping. I think you'd appreciate it. There's a lot of mistakes, as you know, that you can make on almost every application in upholstery, but I'm going to show you the ways to do it if you don't make the mistakes, okay? So let's go over to the cutting table. Cut this on the bias, the double piping. Before you do any cutting, you want to make sure that even if you think you know the back side pretty well, like always scratch it out. Really good tip. That's my first good tip for double piping or any type of piping that you're cutting, single piping and double piping. So what you're going to do is scratch out the back with a piece of chalk. I recommend the chalk that upholsterers use, which is more of a powdered chalk. It's not a school chalk. It's very important. Use a school chalk, you're going to stain most fabrics. Sometimes it'll even bleed through the fabric. This is a powdered chalk, so it doesn't cause any staining and it comes off pretty easy. So there you go, I scratched out the back side of the fabric. Now the reason you do that is when you take it over to the sewing machine, you're going to have just a small section of fabric. It's cut down, so it's going to look less obvious what the back and the front is in some fabrics. So I do it on all my fabrics, even if it looks obvious. I always do it. I always scratch out the back. That way when I'm sitting down, I'm doing a lot of piping, I have no questions about what side of the fabric it is. Okay, so now that we did that, I always work from the top side because I want to pick up any flaws in the fabric. I would advise you, another good tip, don't work from the back side of your fabric because you will not see any type of damage or stain in the fabric. So you could get a job all done and then all of a sudden the client looks and says, what's this? Is a stain or a damage? And it's because you weren't looking. So always work from the top side of your fabric. So now I'm going to cut this. Now for you guys who are beginners, you can get a straighter edge if you want than I did, but keep in mind when you're doing double piping, you have to trim it down anyhow after it's made, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Another good tip, don't sweat it. Don't sweat the accuracy here. Don't waste your time, really. So what I would do, even for beginner, now I would just do this freehand, but I'm going to just show you what you should do if you're a beginner. If you're more advanced, just cut it. Okay, but I would go, depending on the fabric, the width is important depending on the fabric. If you have a very stretchy fabric, look what happens when you stretch it. It thins out, okay? So on a fabric that's stretchy like this one, I would probably recommend that you go 3 inches just to make sure that when it's stretching, and it'll stretch down probably 2.5, okay? So if you have a non-stretch fabric, 2.5 would be okay. If you have a fabric that, like a naugahyde or vinyl, you can go down to even 2 inches on a double piping. Remember, we're talking double piping, not single piping here. Okay, so I would, if I were a beginner, just scratch it out like that all the way up, or you can draw a straight line. But what I do is I pretty much do this by sight, okay? And I just go right along. Okay, so we're at our Juki machine, which I highly recommend, by the way. What we want to do is we have to change the foot out. Having a double welt foot when you make a double welt is absolutely essential. Now, some people have attempted to make double welting with the zipper foot or a regular one-channeled foot for piping, but there's nothing like a double welt foot to speed you up for accuracy. I have to tell you something about double piping. If you make one mistake, it's like you got to start over again, like a slippage, and I'll explain that as we go along. This prevents a lot of the slippage, but just because you have the right tool, you still need the skill, and that's what I'm going to be showing you. So this has the zipper foot. I'm going to be taking that off. There's a screw over here for all you you don't know that, I'm gonna unscrew that. By the way, we put the foot up when we do this in the up position. And really be careful of where your foot is when you're changing anything on your machine. Don't have your foot on the pedal. I mean, I have this plugged in. I would actually recommend that you shut it off, get your foot off the pedal when you're doing this, just safety. If you've never had a needle go through your finger, you don't want that to happen. And that's happened to me just once. So now I'm working my foot. I have the machine off. Some people unplug the machine. That's how, because it's happened to them before. So I'm going to place the foot, the zipper foot over here just to get it out of the way for now. I'll be using that. Most of the time I use the zipper foot. Double piping comes up occasionally. So I'm going to undo the screw just a little bit, and I'm going to put this on. Again, we're in the up position on this. And I am going to hand tighten the screw and then always follow up with the screwdriver. You can't just hand tighten. This has to be followed up. You don't want to crank it up as tight as you can get it. It's kind of like I guess I would equate it with maybe a lug nut, tight. So I'm going to put this over here. I'm all ready to go. And if you can focus in on the threads, the direction of the threads, always check before you start sewing which direction your threads are going in. We thread this left to right, so I want to make sure that we make sure both threads, the bobbin thread, see how it's tangled up a little bit on the foot, make sure they're both going to the back like so, off to the right as you're looking at the machine, just like that. You'll be surprised how many times you'll get a bad start with it being tangled up. You might spend 10 minutes untangling it. So I'm showing you all good tips here, just to give you, to speed you up in the process, and so that you don't make the same mistakes I have made. So we're good to go. The machine, we're going to put the machine on. Okay, so double piping comes in two varieties, the paper and the cloth. The cloth, or the cotton, was a better material, although I haven't been able to get it. So basically the paper, substituted for that. Not as good, it's cheaper, but it makes, if you do it well, it'll make it, you won't notice the difference in the final look. But it's simply just a kind of a small serge thread that's going in here. It's loosely done. So what I recommend you to do is just tape the end of it so that it doesn't come undone on you. Okay, just a quick masking tape. We use masking tape a lot in upholstery. That's just one of the purposes. Okay, so now let's get ourselves ready. I always make sure I have a clear, maybe about a couple of yards loose on the double piping. Getting yourself set at the machine, the proper height for you, your foot, the pedal height, all that is important. So you should have by now be used to your machine before you do a double piping, I think. Okay, so now that's going to be ready to go. Your foot is still up, right? I'm going to put it down, but it's up now. So what I'm going to do now, here's the neat thing. When I talked about scratching the back side of the fabric, so you get to the machine, you cut the fabric down, and then you question, if there's any question at all, it's not worth it. Always scratch the back side. So now I'm looking for my scratch. There's my scratch. Now I know that that's the back side. So I'm going to start with my scratch up, okay, back side up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lift the foot. Now I'm using my knee pedal to lift up, and then I'm going to lower the foot. Okay. Some people in the old machines, the old Singer machines, and I still do it because I'm used to the old Singer machines. You had to plant your foot. I probably would recommend that even on these machines or any machine, just especially for a beginner. I know all you people who have sewn, you probably say he's wasted time there, but I think it's good practice for beginners. And then as you get better, you don't have to worry about that as much. But that's only if you've cleared the machine with the threads. So if you clear the machine with the threads the way I did it, with the threads going off to the right like that, and making sure that it's not tangled up in your foot, you can start up at the top. But from a safety standpoint too, you're better off starting here. Actually, now the more you think about it. Okay, so I'm ready to go, and if you're used to your machine, I have this setting on, if you pan over here, Patrick, I have it set on 3, which I think is fine for double piping. When you're doing a stitch, just with the stitch on a piece of furniture, you might want to be a 2 or 1.5. But with double piping and single piping, we're usually about a 3. Okay, I don't usually go above a longer stitch than that. Okay, so we're good to go. Look, now I place my double piping on the fabric. Okay, now I'm going to show you the mistake people make. They try to eliminate a step. Believe me, don't do this. By eliminating step, I mean they bring the edge of the double piping to the edge of the fabric and then they start sewing. I can tell you, I don't care how good you are or how slow you go, you're always going to miss some of the fabric underneath. And then when you go to flip this, you'll see in a minute, it'll be loose and it won't stitch. And what you'll have is a flaw in your double piping, and you don't want that because double piping is so tight and so neat, you see any little flaw. So you really have to do a good job on this. This is one time we have to focus. Remember also on the other side, on the table, I was talking about how you look at my widths, it's all crazy, right? But you cut this down 2 times, so it doesn't matter, unless you have a pattern or something. But it doesn't matter, as long as you're at least 3 inches on this. If you're a little messy, it's okay. So here we go. I'm going to start sewing, and I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch on that side, you know, and because I didn't cut it so hot, look at I have to adjust for that. That's okay. I'm just going to go along, and then I don't know if you see what I'm doing in the back here. You know, because you have a great machine, you can have the best cutting edge new machine in the world, but it still requires skill. I don't care what they tell you. You still need to go through a little bit of the old process. Learning on an old machine isn't so bad because it teaches you how to work with the machine. You become a moving part of the machine. You just can't, you know, put that like that and let the machine go. So I want to show you what I'm doing. I'm in the back and I'm gently tugging, just gently tugging this in the back so that I'm not creating any puckers over here. That's very important because this is a stretchy fabric. Some fabrics you don't feel like you need to do it, but do it anyhow because once you get done, you trim it up and you fold it over, you start realizing I should have pulled the fabric a little bit in the back. So you see that? So we get set up. I put my index finger down tight. I'm in the back. I have my thumb and my index finger and a couple of other fingers over here, and I'm just letting it glide along. See that? Letting the machine work to a certain point, but I'm actually helping the fabric work around the machine, if that makes any sense. So when you get good, you can go fast. Now, when I just slowed down. So I'm doing all of what I said. I'm turning the fabric. I'm prepping the fabric. Okay. I can speed up. Now you see how I'm wandering off too close to the edge there? I don't want that. I'm going to trim this later, so I don't want to get that close. So I'm going to adjust that over. See that? Make sure that your roll is free. You know, you don't want it to be pulled down there, and then when you get to a point and then it pulls off. It's really hard back and stitches off of this double piping. It wants to break apart when you do that. You didn't think there was so much to double piping, but there is. Do a good double piping. So, take this spot right here. Now, I'm going to lift the needle, lift the foot even more. I'm going to cut the threads. I'm going to cut the double pipe. And make sure I take my thread. Sometimes I'll do it right now, okay? And I want to show you how to trim this. So I want to be even with this all the way up. See that? So what bringing it in and leaving and then having to cut it off, people say, oh, look at how time he's wasting. But what that does is ensure that you've got it stitched. Look how straight that is after you've cut it. I can guarantee you, I don't care how good you are, especially on a stretchy fabric, you cannot line the edge of the welt up with the edge of the fabric without that coming off the seam line, guaranteed. Now, I'd like to hear from you if you are good and fast at doing that. That's probably the other, good and fast. But like I said, sometimes you don't notice that happened, and you go on the next step. You're halfway or 3/4 through the welting, and then all of a sudden you're off. The seam is not catching, and you have to start over again. You have to probably do a whole new piece. If you've noticed also that this piece is one continuous piece, right? I didn't seam this anywhere on the double piping. That's another problem, especially on a light colored fabric. People are gonna see that. You have to order enough fabric in order to cut your welts no matter what you're doing. Sofa cushion single piping or double piping for a big long sofa. You have to make sure that that is not seamed, especially on a light colored fabric. That's the professional way to do it. Okay, so I did that whole thing. Now, a little bit showing here, I think I might trim that up just a teeny bit. If a little bit showing, depending on the fabric, and I know this fabric, I think will be okay. So the next step, so I'm gonna show you right here, right now, it's gonna be a flip, 2 flips, so that you get it like this. I'm gonna do that again, okay? This has to be tight, by the way, 1 and 2. Okay, I'm gonna put that in here. Show you threads are going the right way. I'm gonna put my foot down. Start sewing slowly. Now, you have to slow down now. No matter how good you are, I feel you have to worry about too much to go too fast. You can't go too fast here. So I'll show you why I mean that. So the first process is to pull this towards you to the double welting and then flip it, okay, and flip it tight. Now the machine will tighten it more, but you have to do the prep work for that. Now watch, I'm gonna just shoe this again. I would recommend going about 2 or 3 inches for beginners at a time. For somebody who's experienced, like myself, I'm about 4 or 5 inches away like that. And I'm sewing about 5 inches at a time. Okay, see how nice? See what I'm doing with my fingers? I'm tucking it in and flipping it. And then I'm holding this tight. I'm coming to the back and I'm guiding it in. Not letting the machine do all the work for me. And I think I'm gonna do this whole stretch and then afterwards show you. There's a way of trimming this. Okay, sometimes you see what I'm doing with this motion here? I'm just kind of straightening out the piping. And then I'm flipping it. You know, get comfortable where you are. Okay. That action again. I'm getting the double piping going in that direction. See this also, you can do this movement here to get it flat. It's actually teaching that makes you a better stitcher, I believe, but also teaching slows you down enough to actually make you think about how many different movements that you make as a teacher. You have to relay that to somebody just beginning. I mean, you just can't get on the machine and start sewing and say, here, do this. You have to break it down, and some of the things, even just now, that's a movement here that is so quick for me that I don't even think about it. Okay, but I'm gonna slow it down. The next thing, okay, I'm gonna slow it down and go right here. So I do a couple of things. I come in here, I flip it over. Look what I do. I flatten this down. I make sure we're straight back here, and then I go like, I flatten it out again. Then I hold the back piping. I'm holding the front with my index finger and my thumb. See that? And then I'm not going fast here. I can't go any faster than that. Okay. Go again. Some fabrics. This fabric's working out good at the double piping. So customers a lot of times will demand double piping. It takes a little longer, but sometimes, depending on the fabric, looks better. Now, that said, on antiques, I like the gimp. We've shown you the gimp, the trim. That's kind of nice. It keeps to the tradition of older pieces. Double piping is relatively new, I'd say within the last 80 years. In the upholstery world, that's cutting edge. So here we go. Finishing up with that part. Now what I do is I give it an inspection. I go along, make sure that we look good. It looks good. We didn't come undone once. So okay, now the trimming is you flip the piping. If you're right-handed, you want the excess to your left. If you're left-handed, you want the excess to your right. Okay? It's just easier to cut that way. For a right-handed person, I'm going to put my scissors in here. Sometimes if you're lucky enough, you're going to get a fabric and a good pair of scissors that you can just, look what I'm doing here, folks. Now, the trick here is you can't cut this thread. If you cut this thread, you're gonna have to glue it. At this point, if you cut the thread, you can glue it. Don't feel like you gotta do the whole job over again. I'll show you what I mean. So, but look how lucky I am with the fabrics. I'm holding the scissors at this angle about 2 or 3 inches up into the blade, and I'm getting a nice cut. And that just saved me about 10 minutes of cutting probably. Okay, so I wanna just show you how you almost can't tell what side, although you're left with a little bit, I don't know if you can see this, a little bit of a flange. Okay, when you put the double piping on, I've shown you this in other videos, I believe. Make sure that flange is down. I'll show you, we'll go over to the chair and take a look. Okay, so I think we've done other videos with double piping before, but I just wanted to show you now to finish up on this video. That the flange part of the back side of the piping, and this is the point I want to make, is when you put this on, we're going to start, you know, we will start this double piping in one corner, but make sure the flange is going down. Okay, what I mean by that is, here's the glue gun we're going to be using. Flange down, okay, so that it just rests better on the piece. Okay, that's it. So thanks for tuning in, and you know, stay tuned for other videos. We did a video the other day, Patrick and I, that will be coming up soon too. So we got this one and another one. So thanks for tuning in.